Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Now, this is part 2 to a multi-part story. For this video to make sense, please watch part 1, which is linked in the description and the comments. Several folks asked for an update when something happened, and something has happened. I had a meeting with my ex-wife this week. I appreciate all the advice and perspectives. You guys and gals brought up issues that I would never have considered and truly altered my thinking, thus keeping me from rushing into a likely mistake. Thanks. I contacted my ex-wife a couple of weeks ago via text and set up a time when we could meet to answer some questions and discuss our relationship going forward. I was vague but worded it so she knew this was not a date. She responded immediately. First, I need to clear up a few misconceptions I implied about my life and events. I didn't anticipate how posting and replying to all the great comments here would make me so introspective. I said in my post that our marriage was near perfect. Looking back, I worked hard at my job and as a husband and father, but didn't stop to smell the roses. I lived life in fast forward, not stopping to just enjoy the moments, always rushing to the next thing. Just one example of many. When we spent time at the lake house, I was always doing maintenance or some project or doing things with the kids. That was me relaxing. We never went there just to sit on the dock and hold hands and watch the sunset together. We should have. Not an excuse for her ending our marriage, but I need to own my faults. I'm sure there were other shortcomings. Be aware, guys. I made my life sound perfect for the past 12 years after divorce. It wasn't. I'm very happy now, but struggled to get here, and it's not all cool adventures all the time. My post probably put too much emphasis on my lady friends to express how well I had moved on and my new mindset. It actually took me 2 long years of self-pity and doubt before I even got the courage to go on a double date, and even those weren't fun at first. My post mentioned all the good stuff, but didn't mention the challenges and complications of life and multiple relationships. Not all of the attractive ladies that I encountered were date-worthy. In fact, several had issues and a few were just flakes. Bet the guy market is like that too. That's part of the reason I learned to be so selective and cautious and spend so much time before getting close, if ever. Also, when a lady that I really like falls for someone else and becomes exclusive with him, it hurts and stabs my ego a little. Not everyone is satisfied being non-exclusive. Also, I have developed some additional heart issues and it will likely affect my FAA third class medical to fly soon. One of my lady friends saw this story narrated on YouTube and recognized it as mine. I hadn't thought of that. She was surprised how much I suffered and that I didn't show it, but said it helped explain my thinking, and she thinks it's good that I got it all out there. In fact, it led to a great philosophical discussion about how men and women inherently have different wants and needs from a relationship. That could be a whole posting in itself. Also, when I say my lady friends, it is not a derogatory term like a harem. Just the opposite. I have great respect for these women and value their opinions and independence. These are squared away women in their own right. They don't need me. Turns out I'm mostly attracted to strong women. My ex-wife was one, now not so much. I decided to wait until after all the holidays to have a meetup with my ex-wife to keep it simple. I was on edge all that week and especially that day, not sure why. Maybe from fear that I might still have romantic feelings when face to face. My kids knew about the meeting and wished us luck, no pressure. It went better than I expected. I didn't record the conversation, but took mental notes. I guess such an important conversation keeps you focused because I can recall almost every word and expression over several hours. It's much harder writing about current feelings than past history. These words aren't exact or all-inclusive, but convey the relevant points and tone the best I can. We met at a nice restaurant where we are both friends with the manager and he saved a private, quiet space for us. You warned about her dressing seductively, but she arrived looking elegant. Elegant is seductive to me. Before we sat, she started to hug me, but I turned and pulled the chair out for her. Felt clumsy and awkward. She was nervous too, so we made easy small talk through a couple of glasses of wine until we both relaxed a little. The manager has known us for years and had already poured the wines we each liked. Soon her humor began showing again with her easy smile and those bright eyes. I thought to myself how pretty and personable she is and some guy is going to be lucky to date her. What a strange thing to pop into my head. Completely unexpected. I knew then I'd be okay. I don't hate her, never did, but I don't have romantic feelings for her either. I relaxed, then I unfolded a sheet of paper with my meeting agenda and she laughed and said, "That's just like you." We joked about sometimes when we had overplanned, we were never very spontaneous, and a few times when our plans had gone comically wrong. She then smiled and leaned forward and said, "Okay, what you got there?" She made it easy. First on my list is that I did not want to know details about the affair or about the OM, but I am curious. Why? What happened to us? She knew this was coming. She said that she does not have an adequate answer for why, even after all these years, even for herself. She knows her decisions and behavior were irrational, and she can't comprehend or explain who she was during that time, other than being confused and selfish. She said she became restless and moody and unsure about her life. That's true, I remember that. She started to tell me about how she and the OM met, but I put up my hands and said, "No, I don't want to hear about that. You guys warned me." She actually seemed relieved, but continued that it had nothing to do with me, and it was nothing that I did or didn't do. She insisted that I had been a wonderful husband and father, and she was happy all the years we were married. I let out the breath I realized I had been holding. My second question was, why then? What changed? Why him? I know I should not have added the why him part. It was not on my list, but it just came out. Probably my ego talking. She had anticipated this one too. She said that with her therapist, they concluded it was a perfect storm of the kids gone, life winding down, turning 50, and menopause, and she became anxious and restless, questioned her own worth and purpose, and needed some validation. The OM was there with lots of attention and flattering compliments that were exciting and new and gave her feelings like when we first started dating. She craved the feeling and thrill. He was older, which made her feel younger and more desirable. She became addicted to that high and things spiraled out of control. She said that it wasn't anything special about the OM, he just happened to be there at the right time, flirting and saying all those things. She insisted that none of that justified her poor decisions or actions, but only describes her flawed state of mind at the time. She added that staying with me during the divorce was brutal for both of us because she saw I was really trying and she could barely look at or speak to me because of her guilt and shame, so she just avoided me as much as possible while under the same roof. She knew I was hurting, but her head and emotions were all mixed up, and she was too big a coward to talk to me. She always did avoid personal conflict. Her eyes were getting misty. Hearing all of that hurt a little. She saw the look on my face and apologized again. She wished she could erase everything, that I didn't deserve it, and that it was completely her fault. My third question was, why didn't you just tell me about the OM, especially after we divorced? She said that she was a coward and ashamed and knew how illogical it all was, and she couldn't have explained it to me or anyone else. Our kids and friends found out in their own ways. She said that during our daughter's wedding, it was obvious that I knew and obviously had not known before. She realized that I wouldn't even be friends with her anymore, and it hit her hard that she had lost me completely, probably forever. Also, that the divorce threw a pall over our daughter's wedding and she will never forgive herself for that. A tear fell to the table and I handed her a tissue. Thanks to you guys for the advice to make a list and prepare for tears. My fourth question was, what was it that persuaded you to end a lifelong marriage for a 3-year affair? This one took her off guard. She took a gulp of wine and replied that was never her intention. During the 6 months between the divorce and our daughter's wedding, while I was still friends with her, things seemed okay because I was still in her life. But when I went no contact, everything changed. I would not communicate with her, nor were our kids at the time, nor were many of our friends, and the OM was the only one left for her. She said that they dated but never lived together. That matches some bits of info I'd heard over the years. He even asked her to marry him several times, but she always refused. She said he was good to her, but she knew she would never love him like she loved me. OM's grown daughter was sad that her father had been partly responsible for our breakup and, in secret, urged my ex to stop dating her father and try to make amends with me. However, I wouldn't communicate, so my ex eventually went back to making something work with the OM. He had retired shortly after our divorce and wanted to take her to exotic places around the world. She did go on a couple of trips with him, but didn't enjoy. She got very depressed and had some dark thoughts about herself. She went to IC for months and even got on antidepressants for a while, and that helped. This also matches rumors I heard years ago. She said she finally decided that she would rather gamble on the slight chance of becoming friends with me again rather than date the OM, but knew she couldn't do both. She chose the chance of a future friendship with me and ended it completely with the OM. She said she didn't have real feelings for him after all, just lonely. She was disgusted with herself and very sad for everything she had ruined. She had tears trickling down her cheeks now. She apologized for the pain she caused me and that she would give anything if she could go back and do it all differently, not just to keep me as her husband, but to prevent all of my heartache and upheaval to our family. I wadded up my list and threw it aside in a gesture. There were more questions, but they seemed moot at this point. I took her hand across the table and told her that I loved our life together and still care about her as parents and grandparents, but we've both changed. We can never be romantic again. No dates, no alone time, just family. She said she expected as much and understood. She said she knew that my trust and respect for her was long gone and that she was tainted, but she would spend the rest of her life earning back my respect. She will be thankful if we can interact at family activities and maybe someday friends. I got the impression that gaining my respect back was very important to her. She then said she had some questions for me. I hadn't thought of that. The first was, how did I get through all of this back then? I said that I almost didn't. She broke my heart and very nearly destroyed me, but our dog, the kids, and my friends helped. It actually felt good finally saying that to her out loud. She apologized again. We talked fondly of our late dog Max, and I told her about my recently adopted dog Jerry, not a puppy but a grown lab, which was less adoptable but those sad eyes at the pound who could resist. She wants to meet him. We got Max as a puppy many years ago, and I knew she loved him like I did. She was happy I still had his ashes, so maybe she could say goodbye someday. I also told her I went to mandatory IC sessions and he helped me with my hurt and anger and new life goals. She did not know that and looked sorry. She knew I hadn't believed in such things before. Not sure a cheater realizes all the things victims endure behind the scenes in their wake. She then asked how I was able to cut contact with her so abruptly and completely and for so many years. I must have really hated her. I said that it was not because I hated her or to punish her, but was for my own sanity and to help me move on. She admitted that my NC devastated her more than anything else. I did not tell her that the NC was hard on me too. It took discipline not to reach out to her every day, especially after her sad, conciliatory voicemails those months after the daughter's wedding. I missed her terribly. She said that I should hate her for what she did, and when she heard that I was enjoying life and romancing other women, it drove her crazy. It's all she could think about, and she cried herself to sleep many nights knowing I was likely with someone else. She believes she experienced the pain and loss I must have felt when I learned she was seeing another man, and it was really awful. She finally asked if there is anything she could do that could help me. I replied, no thanks, I'm good, but I wish you'd have asked me that 12 years ago. I quickly added, sorry. She just smiled and took it in stride. I said, okay, enough serious stuff, time to eat. We talked and laughed and reminisced the rest of the evening over a 3-course meal. The manager held the food until my signal. He's one of my NFL game buddies. I do enjoy talking to my ex. We have so much history and memories. We talked about the grandkids and she asked about my activities and I asked about hers. I did ask her how she learned of my adventures and she said that she got updates from a married couple that we are still friends with individually. The husband would brag about me to his wife and his wife would pass it along to my ex. She asked if that made me uncomfortable and if she could stop it, and I said, no problem, I have no secrets. Another dig and she recognized it. I'm becoming a jerk. We reminisced and laughed for a couple of hours and I enjoyed it. As we were leaving, she said, if you ever need someone, give me a call or stop by anytime. Damn, I think she just offered a booty call, no thanks. Our meetup stirred no intimate desires, and I'm pleased about that. I have moved on like you guys said. I guess in my case, 12 years is long enough to get to the cherished indifference mode. I hope she can find someone that will make her happy. I even have a couple of good guys in mind, but I probably should just let that be. I deemed the meetup with my ex-wife a success. I feel much better and calmer because of it. It did feel a little one-sided, but she seemed sincere, and I didn't feel manipulated. You guys warned me about that. She sent me a long email the next day thanking me for dinner and my time. She said that if I ever have any questions about anything at all, she will answer. Also, she says she will meet me again anytime I want. Just give her an hour or so to get presentable since she's not a young girl anymore, her words. In her email, she also offered to send me a timeline she had prepared before our meeting and that I might be surprised. I assume this is a timeline of all the steps in her affair like people mention here. I don't think that's important as we are long divorced and will never be romantic again. I don't need it, but maybe it's something she needs to do. Maybe it's part of cheaters' recovery steps. I know she has read several books about infidelity. It's not that important to me exactly when she got physical with the OM. She left me and our marriage and our kids for his affections. That's all that matters. I visited my daughter that Friday and she and her mother had already talked. I told my daughter things went well, and after 12 years, I think I can be friends with her mother, but not romantic. My daughter said that she didn't expect us to get back together, nor did mom, but they would have been okay if that's what I wanted. My daughter and son are happy, my ex is happy, and I'm happy with our new arrangement. I'm glad that's finally done. I'm looking forward to us watching our grandkids grow and watching our kids being parents. I'll have the best of both worlds, and the more I can keep them separate, the better. One commenter mentioned that I'm looking at this backwards, that I got her all the best years of her life and no one can ever have that again. Don't be sad for what you lost, be thankful for what you had. He's right. All of this has helped me realize how truly blessed I've been and am. I'm humbled and can't thank you all enough. Your comments and advice actually determined the path I chose and opened my eyes to many issues. Trying to respond to your comments was clarifying for me. Nothing in it for you guys, but to help a stranger. The depth of wisdom and experience on this site is awesome. Hats off to you all. Wish I could buy all of you a beer, or wine, or shot, or CBD, or whatever. Live well and prosper. TLDR, my wife divorced me 12 years ago after 28 years of marriage and raising 2 wonderful children. 6 months after the divorce, I was still not over her, then learned from my daughter at her bachelorette party that my ex-wife cheated just before the divorce and was still seeing the OM. After 12 years, I had a meeting with her to discuss our relationship going forward. It went well. In the next update, OP said the following. Update. Sorry for the cryptic phrase in the previous update. My imagination was actually worse than the real. I had to verify a couple of things and think about it before commenting. I assumed some things 12 years ago that didn't actually happen. The crux is that my ex-wife didn't technically cheat on me and she did not divorce me for the OM. Quite the revelation. After the kids and grandkids left the Mother's Day dinner, ex-wife and I cleared the kitchen and settled down with some mint juleps and watched a rerun of the Kentucky Derby. Yes, she had the big brim decorated hat with a big bow. She had done this every year we were together because her mom had done it growing up. Her mom was a true Southern belle, proper and gracious to a fault. Afterwards, I told her that I appreciated her willingness to ride or fly with me, but I would not push it. When she's comfortable, we'll take it one step at a time. Or not. She said that she was a little afraid, but really wants to participate in the things that I love. She even mentioned knowing I get engrossed listening to my music and wanted to learn more about that. She wants to enjoy it that way too. She said that I always had a flair for life and was passionate about things, but she never had that. She admired me for it, but mostly felt like she was watching from the sidelines. Wow, I didn't know she felt that way all those years. I always encouraged her to join me and we did everything together early on, but later she just wasn't as interested. I was taken aback and a little irritated and stupidly said, "So that's why you left me for another man." She said, "Heavens no, I didn't leave you for another man. I left you because at that time I foolishly thought I needed independence and to be on my own. I did not leave you for that man." She asked if she could tell me what happened, but knew I said I didn't want to hear about that. I said, okay, might as well, in a resigned way. Turns out they saw each other quite often while working on event projects and flirted some and complimented her, would take her to dinner and drinks after business meetings, but they never even dated until after our divorce was final and she had moved out. He then asked her out all of the time and sometimes she said yes, but then I was still talking with her and coming over for dinner and helping with things, so all seemed like they were working out okay. She said he was a nice guy, but she had never considered anything more with him. After the daughter's bachelorette party, when I cut all contact, things got real. The kids weren't talking with her, I was not talking with her anymore, and she felt so alone and turned to the OM for comfort. They dated and even went on a couple of overseas trips, but she quickly realized that this was all a mistake. They dated off and on for almost 3 years before she ended it completely for a chance of a friendship with me. I looked at her and asked, "So were you intimate?" She looked at the floor, started sobbing, and said yes. She said that after a while of my no contact, she wanted to connect with someone so much she allowed it to happen, but it just wasn't the same, and she knew she had crossed a line. She said she tried to call me all during that time to apologize and make amends, but I wouldn't answer, so she left me messages. I said that's enough. I don't want to know anymore. My head was spinning. She continued that she's been focused on getting me back in her life, as parents and grandparents and maybe friends or whatever. She'll take what she can get. No other man will ever matter to her, and never really did. She said that when I told her in the restaurant last week that she had the power to hurt me again, it really touched her, and she went home and cried herself to sleep. I asked why, and she said that not only was I letting her back into my heart, but I was so vulnerable to her to admit something like that. Not sure what I think about that. This is just a summary, and there were other details and subjects, but you get the idea. I took an Uber home and left in a I need to think about this mood. She didn't want me to leave yet, but I told her I needed to be alone and think. I don't like drama. Since then, I've been reevaluating my memories of those times a lot. My thoughts and recounting of my life story have been tinted with the thought that my ex-wife cheated and divorced me for another man. I did some verification and recalling and now believe my ex-wife did not cheat on me. She felt guilty about wanting independence and divorcing me and maybe flirting with the OM, but not for infidelity until well after our divorce. I haven't talked to her since Mother's Day and she's left me alone, but I'm sure she's afraid things are bad. It sucks that this makes me feel like D-Day all over again, but I know I should feel good because what happened is not nearly as bad as I imagined all these years. We will be attending a wedding in 2 weeks, her niece, and I was considering picking her up and taking her like a couple, but now not so sure. Life really bites sometimes. Tonight I went dark and put on Garth Brooks. One of the first I queued was The Call with Trisha Yearwood. I like music that fits my mood, and that's my mood. User Intrepid Raspberry said, well, that wasn't what I was expecting when you promised an update. One thing that jumps out at me is your daughter was the one that revealed your wife had cheated. You also mentioned that your daughter and your wife were very close, so I expect your daughter would know one way or the other. Perhaps she simply assumed your wife had cheated on you once she and her brother tracked down the OM on social media. Regardless, I would presume they would have discussed the issue when your daughter confronted her after the wedding or when they reconciled years later. Have you spoken to your daughter about this? I think you should try to find out why she thought her mom was cheating. Let her know what your wife told you. Does this revelation from your ex-wife change your daughter's thinking on this issue? Assuming everything your wife told you was true, I would guess this would change your perspective quite a bit. Your wife did not leave you for another man and did not commit adultery. Yes, she acted selfishly and foolishly by ending your marriage without working on the marriage and her own issues. However, she did not betray you. This is actually very good news. You mentioned in one of your comments that you felt like you were falling in love with your wife again. I don't see how this revelation changes anything. In fact, it should make you feel more optimistic. All it shows is there was a lack of communication between all parties that caused many poor assumptions and choices to be made. That's the tragedy of the situation. I get it. You had a bad night after the revelation. Now that you've had a few days to mull this over, how are you currently feeling? User Common Leadership 48 said, for some reason I missed this update until just now. I am now absolutely blown away by your ex's insistence on a divorce 12 years ago rather than a separation. Makes no sense to me, and if I were your daughter and son, I would definitely conclude the same thing. She was in the middle of an affair. In fact, I still believe she was, even though they didn't have until after you and your kids ghosted her. She may remember it differently today, but she was driven, whether by hormones, facing her own mortality, or another man's constant attention, to making a clean break from you. She may not have left you for that man, but he definitely had a role in her decision. Even his own daughter sensed it and the trouble resulting from it. I'm glad your ego has been restored by your ex's confession, but I'm more confused by this, and I can well understand you're kicking yourself for not hearing her out 12 years ago. Not that you would have believed her. I don't think I would have believed her after being left for dead and finding she was seeing another man. Sex or no sex. All that said, I'm glad you two are finding your way back together. You mentioned in one of your follow-on updates, who is there to comfort the therapist? I thought of a friend who is a pastor and whose wife was dying of cancer. Who is there to comfort him? So I took on that role, and it was scary being a counselor to a counselor/pastor who spends most days providing comfort and reassurance to his flock. You might have to reassure me along this journey. I think you hit on a key component missing in many of our lives. communication. Not just the ability to communicate, but to communicate effectively. I do believe her basic premise. She divorced you so she could find her own way without any outside influence, yet she thought everyone would eventually be okay with it and still be in her life. Without the OM in the picture, she would likely have succeeded. That OM was the fatal flaw in her plan. Everyone, including me, assumed she left for another man and another life and broke contact with her. She didn't plan for that. The rest, as they say, is history. Your daughter has nothing to be sorry for or apologize for. She, along with brother, logically concluded her mother left you for another man and you divorced her because of it. I assure you she is happy to learn otherwise. Glad to hear the Derby hat is still a tradition. If she's styling a hat on Derby Day, she's definitely the whole package. Maybe a slightly different package than the Wedding Crasher gal, but just as nice. Think I'll join you and grab 2 fingers of Angel's Envy, relax, and listen to some Linda Ronstadt. Peace. Edit, I forgot to mention, why in the hell did she decide to do this before her daughter's wedding? I'm completely perplexed by that line of thinking. In the next update, OP said, okay, I just finished Not Just Friends last night. Not an easy read, but wow. Women obsess and men repress. We definitely did that, and apparently it's somewhat common. The situations and all the psychology rang true, even for me. I had workplace interactions over the years that I now see were dangerous. I never acted on them, but I can see how easily things could develop over time, without even trying or intending. Also, don't give up and communicate. We didn't communicate as well as we should have, which is the most important of all. We talked during our marriage and even after the divorce, but we had walls, then I went NC and closed all the windows. Every couple should read this book even if their relationship is good. I don't think I'm going to ask to remain friends with any of my lady friends. If I'm going to be with my ex, it must be 100%. I do trust her, and I want her to always trust me too. I don't want her to worry about my lady friends, ex-lady friends. I will talk with her about it in any case. We're off to a wedding this afternoon. Then in update number 5, OP said the following. We were all dressed up after getting back from the wedding, so we decided to go out for a nice dinner. She looked great as usual. She really is beautiful, and I've always been proud in public with her on my arm. Still am. We sat down and had easy conversation about the wedding and the friends and family that attended, and a little gossip and how people must be talking about us being there as a couple. When we finished eating, I asked if we could talk about my ex-lady friends. She smiled at the ex adjective and said it would be a good idea and glad I brought it up. I told her that I would not be having contact with any of them anymore and I will tell them so and why. Also that I was never exclusive with any of them and never planned to get serious with any of them and never once told any of them that I loved them. All true. I think she was caught by surprise. I grabbed her hand and continued that none of them measured up to you and I have decided that if you'll have me, I'm committed to you from now on. She was crying now, so I stopped, but after a few moments I got nervous and asked if she had anything to say. She finally got out, "No, you're doing just fine." She excused herself to go to the ladies' room, probably to get herself together and freshen up. She was in there for quite a while, but when she got back, she said she knew I was good friends with some of those women and sometimes helped them with things. Are you sure you want to give that up? Because she didn't think it was necessary. Turns out she knows who these women are, not personally, but about them, of course she does. She said that they are respected women, not tarts or gold diggers. If I wanted to continue a non-physical friendship with them, she understands. In fact, she asked to come with me to talk with them so they'll know she's okay with them being friends. I told her that there were 2 ladies that I might like to remain friends with, but didn't want to ever make her worry or feel uncomfortable. And if she ever feels the least bit uncomfortable, just say so and I will stop contact immediately. We discussed more in general about what kinds of things would be okay and some that would make her anxious. She said she would like to think about it some before discussing boundaries, for her too, but that's the main of it. I was pleased. In my truck on our way home from the restaurant, she smiled and jokingly said, "You know that if it ever goes beyond friendship with one of them, I'll kill you." I said, "Same goes, I'd kill you too," and we laughed about it. Who would have ever thought last fall that we'd be laughing about this in May? I did tell her about the Not Just Friends book and she's going to check it out from the library. She had heard of it but hadn't read it, so she'll probably download it as an ebook to her tablet tomorrow. Anxious to hear what she thinks then. She invited me in for a drink when I dropped her off, so I did. We're more relaxed and easy now. You can feel it. No more eggshells or limbo. I was in a playful mood and teased that if her talking to the lady friends with me was really to approve friendships or just to intimidate them into staying away. She just smiled and winked. I'm going to assume she was just joking. God, how can you not love this woman? She's the original whole package. She hinted about me staying over, but I went home after a goodnight kiss. I needed to feed and check on Jerry anyway, my lab, and take pills. She offered to come and help me, and I assume stay overnight, but I'm just not ready for that. This is going really well, and I don't want to screw it up. I think we need more alone time and cuddling before that, but maybe someday. For me, this is a whole new relationship, not a continuation of our previous one. I invited the kids and grandkids for Memorial Day at my place and they've both accepted, even with the short notice. Invited ex-wife, I'll call her Jane and I'll be Tarzan, and she's bringing some side dishes. I'm going to grill for them and their families and for my analyst friend and his 2 grandkids. Should be total chaos, but can't wait. In update number 6, OP said, Update. Memorial Day cookout went great. I had put small flags up and down my driveway and the back patio. I wore a Waitu pilot uniform I had from the years I assisted with an annual air show. I was never in the military, and played patriotic and military music in the background. And we tried to teach the older grandkids about why we have a Memorial Day. After cleanup and everyone else went home, Jane, my ex, and I sat out back with some wine, enjoying the quiet and talking about the day and the grandkids. She eventually said that she had been thinking about our boundaries. I told her that I'm glad she's thinking about it and we will discuss it, but not right now if that's okay. We both just relaxed, which is what I was hoping for. I did take the risk to ask her about some of the fun things she did over the past 12 years. Turns out she had done some cool stuff, including some very large, highly promoted events, and had met and worked with several famous people. One of her girlfriends has a pontoon boat on a local lake, and the 4 girlfriends would go out for a whole day and picnic and drink wine and play Scrabble and gossip and have a great time. I asked if they ever got wolf whistles from guys, and she admitted yes a few times and seemed embarrassed. I told her that if I saw her out there in a bathing suit, I would sure whistle. Also, she became part of an informal dinner and a movie group that went to dine then to watch a movie in a theater or a play on a stage. I teased if there were any men in the group and she said yes, but it wasn't like that. Then when grandkids came along, more of her focus went to them. I asked if she would like us to go on some of these dinner and movie group outings and she was surprised. It's not the kind of thing I would have enjoyed while we were married. She answered yes, of course, couples attending is common, but joked that I am not welcome on the boat with the girls. She asked the same of me and I told her about some of my fun things, but without talking about the lady friends that sometimes were involved in doing them. She knew about the more exciting things, but not about smaller things like fishing in my neighbor's pond, or monthly poker with the guys, diamond quarter stuff, or the local fly-ins, or lunch trips on the Harley, or even that I went to the opera once. First thing she asked after all that is, you went to the opera? I said it wasn't that bad, but one viewing will last me for some time. Then she asked if I could take her fishing at the pond sometime. I was surprised because she would have never considered that before. I'll take her and it is calming, but sitting there in the weeds with the bugs and mosquitoes watching a bobber will not be her cup of tea, but I love her for wanting to try. She also asked if we could ride the Harley since it's so warm, but it was extremely windy, so I told her it would not be a very fun or safe ride. She mentioned our boundaries discussion, and I said that I'm not worried about it because it's mostly common sense stuff anyway. Transparency, no secrets, and see things through your partner's eyes. We can get into the details another time. She said, okay, so my place is still a sanctuary from the serious relationship stuff. We went inside and I asked if she wanted to watch a movie. She said yes, so I handed her the 3D glasses and started the original Top Gun in 3D. When the intro scene appeared and the Top Gun anthem music started, she was blown away and made me hit pause. She almost cried that I had set all this up for her. We had popcorn and wine and watched the whole movie and even cuddled through the last half of it. I promised I would take her to the new one, Maverick, sometime this week. It was pretty late by then and she was tired and had been drinking some during the day and into the evening, and she and the daughter and DIL had been testing peach vodka at one point. I asked if she would like to stay in my spare room tonight. She quickly accepted and went to her car to get her overnight kit. Looks like she came prepared. We had our now standard goodnight kiss and hug, and she went into the spare room. It has its own bathroom. Guess I'll be making breakfast for 2 tomorrow morning. A very good day. Typing all this stuff out and posting it probably seems petty, but it's soothing for me. User Intrepid Raspberry said, "Great update. I think it would be a good idea for Jane to provide you with the timeline she developed. This will help you understand what happened and process the events better. Earlier, I said it wasn't necessary since you did not plan to reconcile, but that obviously has changed. One thing that still bothers me is why she didn't reach out to you more aggressively over the years when you went no contact. Earlier you wrote, however, I wouldn't communicate, so my ex eventually went back to making something work with the OM. He had retired shortly after our divorce and wanted to take her to exotic places around the world. She did go on a couple of trips with him, but didn't enjoy. She got very depressed and had some dark thoughts about herself. She went to IC for months and even got on antidepressants for a while, and that helped. This also matches rumors I heard years ago. She said she finally decided that she would rather gamble on the slight chance of becoming friends with me again rather than date the OM, but knew she couldn't do both. She chose the chance of a future friendship with me and ended it completely with the OM. Once she had a coming to Jesus moment shortly after the wedding debacle and realized you were her true love and focus going forward. Why didn't she move heaven and earth to talk to you? This really confuses me since it might have cleared up a lot of confusion and miscommunication. In the 7th update, OP said the following. Update. Well, I stopped by her place tonight early to take her to the new Top Gun movie. She asked if I would like to come in and have a drink and snack before the movie because the theater is just a few blocks from her condo, walking distance. We got to talking and ended up not going to the movie after all. I had read the timeline she sent me in a spreadsheet. She listed everything back to her first meeting of the OM years ago. Nothing notable for years, then she started into her weird phase as he was complimenting her and taking her to dinner and drinks after business events. Not unusual in the events industry, which is a little like the sales culture. She listed all the steps: compliments, dinner, flirting, heavier flirting, then our divorce, then dating, then my NC, then intimacy, then huge regret, then counseling, then her dropping him and concentrating on me. During their last couple of years, they only dated occasionally and were no longer intimate. After a couple of drinks, I asked her some questions about her timeline, some very personal questions, and about the intimacy, and she cried, but answered. It hurt, but was not as bad as I had imagined all these years. I made her cry and we were already emotional, so I offered her the same, anything she wanted to know, which is fair. Wow, that was intense. She seemed more interested in my feelings for them than the actual physical details. Like, did climbing a mountain with that woman make me closer to her? How did we celebrate? She did ask if there were things they did for me that she hadn't. I was respectful and honest as I could, but it was very uncomfortable. Very. We never talked about that kind of stuff when we were married. She seemed most interested in why they made me happy, not necessarily in bed, but in general. She mentioned a couple of times that she knew she was the cause of all of this and was sorry and does not blame me, but that may have been to get me to open up more. We did this for nearly 3 hours and I became exhausted, at least emotionally. I think she was too, so I asked if I could take her to dinner. She said she would prefer to just stay in. We made a quick and easy shrimp and pasta dish with salads. Things were a little tense at first, but got easier, and we eventually settled and even cuddled while we watched the movie, always. I need to schedule viewing Top Gun at the theater another day. She offered her spare bedroom again, but I said I needed to get home. I was mentally spent from all the serious talk and needed to be in my place alone. When I left, she asked, "Are we good?" And I said, "We're good, talk to you tomorrow." I have the feeling that there may be another session or two like that. Can't say I'm looking forward to it, but whatever it takes. Did not get a chance to even mention a camper trip yet. A couple of days ago, YouTube suggested a video of Robert Palmer's Simply Irresistible, and I clicked on it. Jane could have been a substitute for any of those girls. That's her, except Jane smiles and those girls didn't. She's aged more now, of course, but if you watch, you'll know what I'm dealing with. If she were ugly, would I be this invested? I don't know, but I do want her to be mine again. Good night. A user commented, "Sounds like you had a productive discussion with Jane. You said, we never talked about that kind of stuff when we were married. We did this for nearly 3 hours and I became exhausted, at least emotionally. That makes sense. Remember that you had much more superficial communication during your marriage, so this is new." Earlier, you said, we didn't communicate as well as we should have, which is the most important of all. We talked during our marriage and even after the divorce, but we had walls, then I went NC and closed all the windows. So having much more deep conversations where you talk about emotional things that impacted you both will be difficult and exhausting. Think of it like weightlifting. When you first start, it's awkward and difficult to lift the weight. Over time and with practice, you strengthen your muscles and the exercises are easier. This time, you're exercising and strengthening mental muscles. Based on her timeline, it seems like there was flirting and heavier flirting prior to your divorce. This is an emotional affair where she was seeking male validation outside her marriage. How much this factored into her desire for a divorce is debatable. I suspect it was a factor, but not the main factor. What I find interesting is that when you spoke about your female friends, you said she seemed more interested in my feelings for them than the actual physical details. This implies she is much more impacted by an emotional connection you might have towards other women than any type of physical relationship. Given her flirtations with OM prior to your divorce, this seems a bit hypocritical. She was giving him emotional energy, not a physical relationship, but this is precisely what she values/prioritizes in a relationship. Perhaps she was just in a bad place mentally at that time, self-absorbed and selfish, and did not realize the hypocrisy. Now that she has had time to work through the issues plaguing her at the time, empty nester nearing 50, menopause, lack of direction, perhaps she can see clearer. Have you explained to her how badly the divorce and relationship with the OM damaged you? If not, this should be part of your communication. I'm sure she knows she hurt you, but probably doesn't understand the depth. I think you're doing really well. Give this time and don't stop communicating. Another user commented, I'm younger than you, but from my perspective, women tend to focus on the emotional, did he love her more than me, rather than the physical, while men tend to focus on the opposite. I'm guessing it's just how we are wired. Then in update number 8, OP said, update. Well, I'm heading to Jane's place this evening. I was drinking with a couple of buddies last night, and Robert Palmer's Simply Irresistible came up. One of them reads my posts. He says that, in his opinion, that song is about all the plastic surgery in the 80s. She used to look good to me, but now I find her simply irresistible. Also, she's so fine, there's no telling where the money went, which means it went to her various alterations and enhancements. Also, the girls in the background all look the same, which signifies the generic perfect girl, even if made that way. I thought I was into music, but this guy goes way deeper than me into the meaning of songs. I talked with my Wedding Crasher lady friend, one of the two that I would like to stay friends with. I described to her that Jane and I were dating again. She was not surprised. She said she always knew my ex-wife was still in my head, and that was okay. We had lots of fun times, and she enjoyed me and hopes things work out. But if not, I asked if we could still be friends, and if I could still help her with things, and she said she would like that. If Jane is okay with it, you're a good guy and good luck. The other lady friend is a friend of hers, and I know they talk, so that part may be done. Tonight, I'm going to ask Jane about a scamp camping trip and see how that's received. I'm not sure what she has planned for the evening, but I'm looking forward to it. I have to remind myself we're in our 60s, not kids anymore. User Me Too Neither said, I'm not much younger. I can still hold my own. I don't free climb anymore. Mainly because of a drunk driver and some issues with lasting nerve damage, but the important parts work just fine. My wife asked me once what I would do if my ex showed back up. I looked at her and laughed. We had a somewhat similar breakup. She left for her AP. Funny thing, a lot of her friends dropped her and became my friends. Her BFF was one of them. The former BFF became my BFF. We then became lovers and in the course of time, husband and wife. I have been following your posts. I got the impression early on that you two would reunite. I'm hopeful that the second time around will be epic.